So the basis to look at it is like this, is that you want to think about time series, time-related activity in a product sense. So that means that if you know that there's something physical that is being sold or being engaged in, or whatever it is that you're going to do that is of a physical nature, the social conditions are very different than if it's purely a service. Because if you think about it, if you buy your first motor car, or you buy food at a restaurant, whatever it is, there's something very physical, and it's typically considered to be hyper-local. So that means the human has to be present to enjoy that particular product that they've got that might be in existence for a certain period of time. So that means understanding the data points around how you would prove that the person was there, what they use it for, when they use it, will then tie you into the service thinking. And service dominant logic tells us that you have to understand the reasons why people got there in the first place. How much time did it take you to make a decision? Once you have made the decision, how much time did you spend with whatever it is that you have purchased? When did you stop using it? At what point did you decide to try other things that are as novel as what you've just bought? So that means that understanding the separation of the physical and the world of acquiring something, that asset gets transferred to you that is hyper-local in the physical world, versus consuming things that are inconsumable, require very different treatments in your time-related activity, especially if you're going to build recommendation systems to fit within something that provides something useful for a customer. So to get theoretical just for a moment, this is a view that was created by Richard Norman, who is a Swedish researcher that worked with companies like IKEA and a lot of really big businesses throughout his life. And I think what was really great is that he took a social science view of time and overlaid it over how we see our everyday life, and especially how we run kind of our businesses and our thinking. So to tie it back to what Jason Daniel was telling you into more like a framework, is that we have this concept called the current established mental map, and that established mental map essentially is the programming that was done on us from our childhood. So that means that as you travel through time, you have been programmed to believe certain things and to think about the world in a certain way, and all of your prejudices come programmed. And that means that when you then reflect on it and you look back in time, you see history kind of maybe conceptually, but it's only when it's recorded do you see it objectively. So that means that when you said that something happened at a certain point in time, like I was born on a certain day, those are very discrete time events that you can say that, yes, there's evidence for it. But then there are other things that if you had basically been through a situation where you liked school and then you didn't like school, or you like to work with somebody and you don't like to work with somebody, and you had to ask somebody to please give you the discrete dates when these events happened, or at what point did you stop liking something, at what point did you not want to go somewhere, you find that things get incredibly fuzzy. So it gets completely conceptual. So that's why we call it the conceptual past, is that people find it difficult to reflect on that. And I think this was really a major issue in social science research, if you had to focus on immersing yourself into a situation. So you need to find evidence that will tell you that this is actually what happened. The person went through a series of changes. They drove a certain way, or they traveled somewhere, or they ate certain food, they communicated with certain people, and as a response of this complex mesh of activities, they then changed their buying behavior. And sometimes we like to believe, if you had to think of maybe professionals in marketing or those kind of disciplines, that it was the fact that somebody liked my product and they didn't. But in most cases, there are many reasons that together form the evidence bits of how people would move through time. So the big part here is if you look at the archetypes of the collective unconscious. If you live in the era that you're living in and you are really connected with the people around you, you will be deeply basically influenced by them. So if you had to live during Germany in the 1940s, or you had to live in maybe in Silicon Valley in 1995, or you had to just think of some events that maybe you all can relate to, is you get the whole collective around you almost forcing the belief systems, the thinking, and you get programmed to believe that is how things should work. So when you then move into a future state of time, you still got all of that prejudice and all of that thinking embedded in how you how you reason. So that means that you need to figure out how to upframe. So upframing gives you an ability to use what's known as creative induction, to be able to have a creative view of the world that you now want to see differently, create a new future that's called, an artifact scenario of what the future could be, project your life to get there, and then work your way back to see what is it I need to do today to change in my thinking that I must fix first before I move into a future state. So we just see that computational social science gives us a mechanism to understand this non-conscious domain, to track the evidence of the belief systems, of the thinking, of the ways in people buy, the way they engage, the way they show evidence of their existence, because they don't do it deliberately. You cannot interview somebody ever and get that evidence from them, because they just don't know. They don't remember. They don't reason about it that way, but they will leave shreds of evidence behind. Then the domain of the everyday discourse helps you to engage with them, so you know that if somebody is not fundamentally going to like a certain brand of car, certain brand of clothing, or they want to engage with a certain type of company, you want to be able to see if there's something that is subconscious to their situation. It's a non-conscious domain evidence that will help you to understand how you engage with them. And then this abstracted domain, the consciously abstracted domain, help us then to design influencing systems, nudges and the like, that will get them to believe something new, that will shift them from their old belief system. So you need to make sure that it's sufficiently nostalgic to create a hook, but it needs to be also new, that it's novel, and that way you then move people through time. If you make it too far, you create a cognitive jump that is just too large, and people cannot make that leap, they just won't engage. So you need to figure out how you move them through time, and this helps us to understand, how that actually happens. So now the thing is that this is one of the ways that you can look at it. It's also one of Norman's models that I think that for me had a huge impact on how you kind of need to see the world, maybe even if you have to think of it in that kind of way, that if at a certain point you reflect on what's possible in the future, and you say, well, yes, I'm going to go and try out new things. You have to ask the question, well, or where am I? And the only way that you're going to know that you truly achieve the things that you should be achieving is that you have to ask the question, what could I be? I mean, where could I be? And what is it that I could do? Not will do or must do or goal-driven, achieve only that. So the concept here is to say that if you open up your reasoning and your thinking and you expand your mindset, you want to make sure that you attempt many options. You want to try multiple things before you then decide, yes, now that I've tried many options, I will pick a few and I will then get to the outcome, and that will then get me to a place as to what I should be. So that means I can go from where I could be to where I should be. But if that line is linear and singular, then normally what you would find, people then end up with being not happy, like we discussed in some of our happiness just before. But that just means that if you want to take somebody down a route of taking them to a point where that's a better place, the idea is that you need to give them options. And you want to give them options reliably through recommenders, and through, in our case, we've got technology that will help you to figure out where people could be. You want to figure out what those options are. And the more you test the options, the more you will see that they will converge on the things that they really will like, or maybe they should like, they believe they should like, in every single discipline of their life, because you have this ability to keep on testing the boundaries of where people see their own lives. Anyway, so the last part of this, is probably more, a repeat of what Jason and I have done. This is just the actual definition of how psychology sees time, and the fact that it's, the fact that we reflect on something in a chronological order and the like. And if you look at it in social science, what is great about social science is that we're not tied to any one definition. We kind of use whatever is useful to us to solve a problem and to make sure we get to an answer is what we are interested in. We don't believe that time is just one finite concept. And that just means that computational social science means that we've got subfields of study that help us understand how things work. So that means that if you had to take social network analysis or organizational network analysis, looking at changes in a business over time, or look at collective behavior of change over time, or look at how knowledge is acquired over time, or look at cultural shifts over time. So for us, time is the essence of all of this work, because you truly understand the shifts and the impact of decisions and of products and of brands and whatever it is over time by understanding all of these elements. And you want to bring all of that together in a kind of more safe computational way. And that means that the data science world sees it more mechanically. It sees it as what's known as time series data. But for us, it's far more than just a time series data set. You know what I mean? So that means a social collective view of how time has changed relationships over time and so on is not always just seen as a dynamic, movable network. It's not time series. So that means we need to expand our definition of how we see all the time-related data points.